Las Vegas, Nevada. Concealment shelves are a very, very popular item that I produce in my shop, and I've looked at various ways of creating this look I want underneath with the angle on the, in this case, a drawer, and how to use simple crown molding that we can pick up at the home centers and how to achieve the look that we want. And since there's a huge variety of not only styles but in sizes of this, today we're going to deal with this crown molding. It's 2 3/4 inches in width, and I'm going to show you how we create this drawer body so that we can apply crown molding and get the look we want for a very, very nice looking drawer. The materials we're going to be using today, I've got a blank that's going to be my shelf bottom, and I've got some pieces pre-cut here that we're going to use as perimeter pieces for 3 sides of this drawer blank. Now, in a lot of my projects, I'll buy 2x4 lumber, I'll run it through my planer, cut it down to 3 inches in width, and I use that. But let's assume that you have a table saw and you have a compound miter saw. We're going to approach it today with those 2 tools in mind, and if you don't have a planer, it's not a big deal. I use a 3/4 inch plywood. I cut 2 strips, I'll glue them together and cut this down to 3 inches, and now I've got a nice material that we're going to glue up on our perimeter. So I'll get set up, I'll make a couple cuts, and we'll continue on from there. Well, let's continue on. I've got my 3 perimeter pieces cut, these 3. Now first, how do I know how big the size is as far as the width of the drawer? Let's say this is going to be a 24-inch shelf. We want to make the drawer smaller and take into account that the angle of the crown molding that we're going to be applying to this drawer increases the width. So I'm looking for a target width, once the crown molding is applied, at about in the neighborhood of 22 inches to fit comfortably under a 24-inch wide shelf. With that said, what we do from here is this first piece, we want to cut about an 1/8 inch less wide than our blank. And when we glue this in place, we want to make sure that this front edge of this piece is flush with our drawer bottom. We don't want to use any nails or brads in this because we're going to be running this through the table saw, and we don't want our saw blades hitting those metal pieces. The other consideration I have is when we glue these side pieces on, and they're going to be just a little bit shy of this outer edge, and we want that. I use a drafting triangle to make sure that my interior is perpendicular, and I'll do that on both sides, and then let the glue set. Once the glue is set on all 3 sides, then I'll show you how we set up the table saw and we make the 3 cuts for this on our drawer. Now, as far as this depth, I tend to make it long or deeper than we need. I'll cut these just a little bit proud because one of the last things we'll do when we're sizing this drawer is we'll run it again through the table saw and we'll clean up this back edge on here, and then from that point on we can figure out how we want to close up the back of our drawer. So what I'll do now is I'm going to glue these up, let the glue cure, set up my saw for the cuts, and we'll continue. While this glue dries up on 2 of these sides, I'll point out something here while we can see it clearly. For this front piece, we're going to be cutting off most of the material, but we do want to leave between 3/4 of an inch and 1 inch on the drawer bottom itself so that we've got good support, and there's plenty of glue under there. It'll be plenty strong over time. So what I've done is just I figured out where 1 inch was, and then looked at what my angle was going to be for the cut, and that gives me a fairly accurate idea of how much material that we're going to take off the front of this. But I did want to cover that before I glue this other side in, and it gets hard to describe how we look at that dimension that we want to maintain. Okay, ready to keep going. What we're going to do is make the final 3 cuts on this drawer bottom, and as you can see, my interior, the wings are exactly perpendicular to the front of my box. Now, I may have mentioned earlier to leave these proud. No, that's wrong. You want to leave the drawer proud on these three sides, the back and the two sides. The reason being is that those are the surfaces that we want riding against our fence, and it gives us good, straight, accurate cuts. The other thing I want to mention is I want to leave about 2 3/4 inch width on these sides, and what that does is it lets us accommodate these drawer slides, which are just under 2 inches, but it also gives us a flat surface outside of the drawer slide that we can build up with additional material that hides the drawer slide when it's under the shelf. And I'll explain that later when we look at applying the crown molding. But for now, I'll go ahead and shut the camera off. I'll make the 3 cuts and we'll keep going. Well, at this point we have our 3 cuts made. We have all our angles and nice and cut. I ended up with 2 3/4 inches on these outside pieces, and the front top thickness was right at 2 inches. Now, for applying the crown molding, turn the drawer upside down if you're using this smaller molding. This is 2 3/4 inch molding. And work upside down on this. And I'll use a cheater piece to line up one side, and then I'll start working on this side. I'll cut a little proud and just nibble off a little bit at a time until I get a good tight seam on both sides. Once I have my front piece sized, then I go ahead and I secure the front with glue and a few brad nails, and then I'll add the side pieces. And I leave the side pieces just a little bit proud, because the last thing you want to do when you trim this down to size is you want to cut everything off the back side of this flush. Now this drawer is set up pretty much except a 9-inch drawer slide. Depending on how deep you make your drawer, you can go 10-inch drawer slides or 12 or whatever size you want. But for a 12-inch deep shelf, a 10-inch drawer slide seems to work just fine. Now if you're using wider crown molding, this is 4-inch crown molding, the application's a little differently. Here we were able to work with the drawer upside down, and there's a reason for that. When all is said and done, the top of this crown is flush with the top of this drawer, and that gives us a surface that after it's all in place, we can add a perimeter that's 7/16 of an inch tall on these 3 sides. And what that does is when we add our drawer slides, which are 1/2 inch thick, it gives us a 1/16 inch gap between the underside of the shelf and the top of the drawer. Now, I started to mention if you're using the taller crown, it's a little different application. Working with the drawer right side up, get these on the right side. Apply your crown right side up. It's a little more difficult to work with, but you can still get in there and apply your crown, and the taller crown gives you a much deeper drawer. This drawer would come in at about 2.5 inches deep from the bottom of the drawer bottom. So, smaller crown, work with the drawer upside down, and apply your crown. And the reason we cut at 38 degrees is because all crown molding is cut. That's what they call 38-52 angles. So if it's 38 degrees this direction. That means from the other plane it's 52 degrees, all the way up to 90 degrees. As far as how you want to use this, you can decide. Like I said, I tend to go with drawer slides. They're easy, there's not a lot of hardware involved, and they look perfectly fine. If you want to get a little more complicated and have a hinge mechanism where it drops down as a tray, that's up to you. There's not much left to do but to trim this drawer to the depth that I want, add a piece in the back, and then since I use drawer slides, I will add my perimeter pieces, and then I'll build my shelf to accommodate it. Now this project turned out to be, with crown, it's going to be in the neighborhood of 19, maybe 19 and a quarter inches wide on the top of the drawer, and that's completely narrow enough to fit and look right under a 24-inch shelf. Anyway, I hope this inspires you to get out into your shop and make yourself your own concealment drawer for a shelf. From Las Vegas, I'm Alex. Take care.